everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Amelia and we are now at the end of June, so we are about halfway through the year, and I think it's time that we take a look at everything that I've read so far this year and rank them. So without further ado, let's get into it. Okay, so I've got myself this little tier ranking thing set up. So at the top we have God tier, that's pretty self-explanatory. That's going to be reserved for my top tier best books so far. Then we have Chef's Kiss. These are probably going to be books that I really enjoyed but didn't quite do enough to get into God tier. Then we have Goodreads. I've used this before. It's what it says it is on the tin. These were reads that were good, but I didn't feel particularly strongly about them. Then we have You Were So Close for the books that don't quite make it into Goodreads, you know. They're not quite what I was hoping for. And then we have Why Did You Waste My Time? And I think I only have really one book that's going to go into this category, but yeah, it's just for the books that I felt like were a waste of my time to read. I also have my reading journal here to help me remember what I thought of all these books, because sometimes when you read a lot of books, I just kind of tend to forget what I thought about them, and I'm also going to try to go in the order that I read the books. But the first thing I read this year was Ship of Magic by Robin Hobb. This is the first book in her nautical inspired trilogy following merchants and pirates and all that kind of fun stuff. And for me, I absolutely adored this book. It's going in God tier, no questions asked. I just adore Robin Hobb and her character work. So yeah, that one is definitely going in God tier. And then after that, I read The Bear and the Nightingale by Catherine Arden, I believe. Yeah. And originally I had rated this 4 stars, but in retrospect, I feel like it was kind of just decent. Like, I don't feel really strongly about it. I pretty much never think about it. I did take out the next book from the library to read it, but then I never did, and I returned it and I never took it out again. So I guess that tells you that I didn't really feel that strongly about it because I wasn't super excited to read the next book. After that, I read The Mad Ship and Ship of Destiny, and I'm just going to go ahead and put all 3 of these into God tier. As I've said, I adore Hobb. I don't want to go on about it too much more, but if you love good character work, interesting plots that, while they're a little bit slower than some fantasy stuff, there's always something that's like pulling you forward, whether it's like the desire to like know what happens to the characters or what happens in the overall plot. I just highly recommend it. I know it's not for everybody, but it definitely was for me. After that, I read Chain of Gold by Cassandra Clare, and I quite enjoyed this one. I would say probably at the top of Goodreads. And then Chain of Iron I liked a little bit less, yeah, I think I put it below The Bear and the Nightingale. It was just, I don't know, Cassandra Clare's writing kind of gets old after about 1 book, I would say. After that, we have Crown of Swords. I think I probably put this in Chef's Kiss. My problem with Wheel of Time is I tend to forget what happened in each book, so it's hard to remember what I rated each book. So alright, next up I read Axiom's End, and this kind of just like, I don't know, I didn't feel like it was super crazy, that anything that special. It's kind of just talking about like aliens and like the language barrier, and I feel like it can probably go, I think below Bear and the Nightingale, but probably above Chain of Iron. And then after that, I read Over the Woodward Wall, which was cute, but also kind of like underwhelming because it's written for a low grade, and that definitely really comes across in it, so it wasn't my favorite. I'll probably put it at the bottom of Goodreads. It's probably, if you have like young kids, I think they would probably enjoy it, or you might enjoy reading it to them. But for me, it was just like a little bit too low grade for me. Alright, next up we have A Deadly Education by Naomi Novik, and I really didn't like this. I kind of think it was a waste of my time. I just felt like it was written so, I don't know, I just couldn't connect to the main character, and I didn't feel that interested in the world, and didn't feel like the school made a lot of sense. So yeah, I did give it like 2.5 stars, so I mean, it was an okay read, but I also just kind of felt like I was expecting so much more from it, so that's why it really felt like a waste of my time, because I had heard about it and I was like, oh, seems like it would be good, and then I just didn't enjoy it, so yeah, it just felt like a waste. After that, I read Cultish by Amanda Montell, and I have a little bit of a hard time ranking non-fictions, because like, did I learn something? Yes. Was it enjoyable to listen to? Yes, but I don't know if it deserves a place in Chef's Kiss, you know? Like I feel like it needs to go at the top of Goodreads, because like I did learn some stuff, but also some of what she was saying I was just like, well, this is kind of just like common sense. So alright, next up we have Invasion of the Tierling by Erica Johansson. And yeah, this book is gonna have to go in You Were So Close, because I did enjoy the first book and I liked the elements of this book that were like in the setting, like the crossing, whatever they call it. But I really just can't stand the main character. I forget what her name is. The girl who's like the queen. She's just, I don't know. I don't like her. She's like entitled and rude and she just pisses me off. So I am not continuing this series anymore because I don't want to deal with her. Next up we have Fifth Season, and while I have talked about not really liking the Broken Earth trilogy, I did really enjoy Fifth Season. That's the first book, and it was just the other two books that I didn't really like, so that one's gonna go at the bottom of Chef's Kiss for now. Next up, I read Vita Nostra, and this is definitely quite different from the other things I read. It's a little bit strange and kind of, I don't know, absurdist isn't the word, but I'm not really sure what the word that I'm looking for is. I think I would put this at the top of Goodreads. Maybe I might have to adjust that later because I feel like my Goodreads section is just gonna end up being like most of the books that I read, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Next up we have Season of Storms by Andrzej Sapkowski, and I really enjoyed this Witcher book. It really mostly just follows Geralt. We don't have Ciri, so I would say that this is gonna go in Chef's Kiss. I'm gonna put it above Fifth Season, I think, because I just really enjoy the books where it's just Geralt kind of messing around. He's such a great character. He's very interesting, and he's a lot more in-depth than the sort of portrayal he gets by like the Netflix show where she's like silent brooding man. Like he's actually quite intelligent and likes to talk, and sometimes he won't shut up. But yeah, I really enjoy him as a character, so I think that's a good place for that. Next up we have Hunger of the Gods, and this is one of my favorite books that I read this year. I gave this one 5 stars. I think I will put it just below Ship of Magic. And then after that I read The Body Keeps the Score, and this one I had some problems with, so where to put it? I think it will go under Cultish, because like it had so much good information, but it really just ruined it for me with all of like the excessive descriptions of trauma that I felt took away from the message she was trying to convey. Next up we have Black Wolves by Kate Elliott. I really enjoyed this. I'm probably gonna put it at, let me put it at the top. I'm probably gonna put it at the top, or no, it's gonna go under Vita Nostra because I did have a problem with it with like the time skip sort of thing. But other than that, I really enjoyed it. I felt the characters were really well done, and I was really disappointed to discover that it was dropped by the publisher. So yeah, hopefully we will get another book in that series at some point, but who knows? I'm not holding out much hope. Alright, next up I read Tress of the Emerald Sea, and I really enjoyed this. I think I'm gonna put it in the Chef's Kiss tier for sure. But I think between Season of Storm and Fifth Season, so many seasons going on up there. After that was Breathers of the Wind, and that is a Tad Williams book that takes place in Austin Ard. And I think I'm gonna put that above Fifth Season. It was such like a well-crafted story for how short the book is. I think it was like 200 pages or so, but we really feel like a complete story. Alright, then we have The Once and Future Sex by Eleanor Janiga, and I hate to do it to this, but I think I'm gonna put this in You Were So Close, just because, I don't know, I was expecting something that it wasn't maybe, and that's probably my fault, but oh well. Also, I think I'm gonna downgrade Over the Woodward Wall, just because, I don't know, I just feel like I should. After that I read Obelisk Gate, and I feel like I liked it more than Axiom's End. Yeah, I think I'm gonna put it between Bear and the Night Girl and Axiom's End, just because, I don't know, I just feel like that's where it needs to be. After that we have Path of Daggers, and I do remember specifically enjoying this Wheel of Time book, so I'm gonna put it at the top of Chef's Kiss, just above Crown of Swords, but I'm not sure that it's quite good enough for God tier. After that we have Starry Messenger by Neil deGrasse Tyson, Like I was saying about nonfiction, it's a bit hard to rate them, but I honestly don't really think I learned that much from this one, so it's gonna go in You Were So Close, because like some elements of it were interesting, but a lot of it was just like, what are we talking about? How are these things connected at all? Probably gonna go here, just under Once and Future Sex, because at least I felt like that had a more cohesive structure than this one. Alright, so then we have Priory of the Orange Tree. I did really enjoy this. I had some problems with the pacing, and specifically how they spent like 500 pages amping up how tough and bad and evil, whatever the guy they have to fight is, and then they kill him in like 5 seconds. So that was my major problem with this, but I did really enjoy the character work and the representation of more developed female characters as well as LGBTQ plus relationships. So I think I'm gonna put this under Brothers of the Wind. I just don't think it was quite as masterfully done as that one. And it had so many pages. Then we have My Hygge Home. This is, I think, is gonna be the only nonfiction that makes it into God tier. I just felt that it was extremely well done. It's narrated by the author, so it was really enjoyable to listen to because you can tell he has a connection with the work, and he was able to explain the concept of hygge and how it relates to happiness very well in a concise manner, and it just made me happy to listen to it, so that one deserves to be in God tier. And then I read The Dragonbone Chair, which I did have some problems with the pacing at the beginning, so I think that's just going to go in Goodreads, but probably at the very top. Then we have Stone Sky, and this one is going to go at the top of You Were So Close, just because I felt like for a lot of its pages it was kind of wasting my time, but the last like 50 or so pages were really well done and impactful, and I felt myself caring about the characters again, so that kind of bumps it up a little bit in my estimation. Then we have The Little Book of Hygge, and this one was not quite on the same level of My Hygge Home for me. I just felt it might have just been because I listened to them kind of back to back that I was like, okay, I kind of already got all this information, so it wasn't hitting the same, but I'm gonna put it in Goodreads just under Body Keeps the Score. Next up, I read Fellowship of the Ring, and I'm just gonna go ahead and sneak that into the top. I don't feel like I have to explain that choice or say anything about it. Moving on. After that, I read The Storm Before the Storm, and this was a really interesting book about kind of the fall of the Roman Republic and all the events that led up to the fall of it. So that one's gonna go in Chef's Kiss for me. It's really hard to compare the nonfiction to the fiction. I almost did like a separate list for each of them, but I'm gonna go ahead and put it, I think above 5th season, but under Priory. Even though they're like not the same sort of thing at all. And then next up I read The Counselor. This one had some weird things to it that really detracted from what overall was starting out to be like a good story. I enjoyed the politics and stuff at the beginning and even some towards the end, but it just became, I feel like it kind of downgraded as it went on. Like it started and it was like, okay, I'm reading like an adult fantasy, and then it kind of became like, okay, I'm reading a YA like romantic fantasy, and that was not what I thought I was signing up for. So for that reason of it being not what I wanted, it probably also is going lower for me. But there was like some weird stuff that I'm like, I don't want to know this. What has this got to do with the plot at all? Honestly, I think for that reason it's gonna go below Chain of Iron. At least with Chain of Iron, like it's not pretending to be something it's not. It's like you're gonna read this YA romantic fantasy thing and you're either gonna like it for being YA romantic fantasy or you're not. Alright, then we have Rage of Dragons by Evan Winters. I really enjoyed this. There were a few things, specifically the main character, that kind of didn't work for me, but I think I'm still gonna put it at the top of Goodreads, just below Dragonbone Chair. Okay, so I just realized that at some point I skipped over Stone of Farewell, but Stone of Farewell I really enjoyed. I'm gonna put that one up in Chef's Kiss. Honestly, probably above Priory, but below Brothers of the Wind. After Rage of Dragons, I read Black Sun. Now this one is difficult. I think it's at about a 4.5 star. So I'm torn between putting it at the top of Chef's Kiss and the bottom of God tier. I think it's gonna have to be at the top of Chef's Kiss or maybe below Path of Daggers. Ooh. I think I'm gonna settle on just below Path of Daggers, because while it was really interesting and definitely a bit unique for the fantasy world, just, you know what, I'm gonna put it above Path of Daggers. I really enjoyed it. It's just not quite on the same tier as the things that are in God tier. And then right after that, I read Fevered Star. This one is quite good, but it suffers a little bit from middle book syndrome, so I'm gonna put it just below Rage of Dragons. Just a few things weren't done to my taste, and it's a little bit kind of like waiting for things to get ready for the final showdown, which will presumably be in the next book, which I think is the last. I think it's just the trilogy. But yeah, I mean, it had a few flaws, but it was still really enjoyable. After that, I read The City We Became, and I just don't jive with N.K. Jemisin's writing, unfortunately. So I think I'm gonna put it, definitely has to be above The Counselor, and you know what, I'm gonna downgrade The Counselor. Unfortunately, it just, yeah. But yeah, I'm comfortable putting it there, below Axiom's End, but above Chain of Iron. And then the final book that I read all the way was The Shadow of What Was Lost. And this was quite good, but it didn't blow me away. It borrowed a lot of elements, and I know all fantasy does that to an extent, but it did it more than I would have liked. With that being said, I do feel like the plot was interesting. I kind of felt like the magic system was a little bit messy, but other than that, I'm probably gonna put it, you know what, it's probably gonna go below Black Wolves for me, because while Black Wolves had some pacing problems for me, at least I felt like the world and like all the elements were more original. And then finally, I read The Unspoken Name, but I did not complete this book. I DNF'd it because I got bored. So that's gonna obviously have to go at the very bottom because it's the only book that I didn't finish. So that is everything that I've read so far this year, all ranked and ordered. I could probably fiddle around with this forever, making little tweaks here and there, but it's not that deep, so I'm not going to bother. All right, let me know in the comments if you agree or disagree with my rating system, and what is the best book that you've read so far this year. But yeah, that is going to be everything from me, so thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.